Picture this. You are standing at the dealership, keys in hand, with the promise of a substantial government grant dangling in front of you, inviting you to drive off in a brand new electric vehicle. It sounds like a dream scenario, the kind of push that should send buyers flocking to make the switch. But instead of leaping at the opportunity, countless people across the United Kingdom are pausing, weighing the pros and cons, and sometimes even turning away. Why is that? What if the grant is not the golden ticket it first appears to be? This is the puzzling situation playing out in showrooms and living rooms up and down the country, triggered by a new government initiative that has sparked both hope and hesitation, anticipation and anxiety. Let us set the stage. The world is in the midst of a transportation revolution. From the bustling highways of California to the megacities of China, policymakers are aggressively steering societies toward cleaner, more sustainable transport options. Electric vehicles, once a niche curiosity, are now front and center in the battle against climate change. Governments everywhere are unleashing a flurry of policies, tax incentives, and mandates to speed up adoption and cut carbon emissions. Here in the United Kingdom, the government has just rolled out the much-discussed electric car grant, a major financial incentive designed to ignite a surge in demand for battery-powered cars. On paper, it looks like a win-win. Consumers get help with the upfront cost, manufacturers get a nudge to ramp up production, and the nation gets a big step closer to its net zero future. But as with all policies, the devil is in the details, and the real world is never as simple as a press release. To understand the impact, let us look at the numbers. Remember, all of these are based on recent surveys and research, so they reflect the mood of real car buyers. Out of 1,000 decision makers polled, roughly 4 out of every 10 say the grant makes them more likely to consider an electric vehicle as their next purchase. That is a significant chunk. But the picture gets even more interesting when you break it down by age and by current ownership. Among younger drivers, especially those under the age of 35, nearly 2/3 are now seriously eyeing electric vehicles. That is a tidal wave of interest from a generation that will shape the future of mobility. For those who already drive hybrids, the pull is also strong, with over 3/5 tempted by the promise of a government-backed deal. But that is not the whole story. Even buyers searching for used cars, who technically are not eligible for the grant, are being swept up in the excitement. The buzz is real. Almost half of all car buyers surveyed say the grant makes them more likely to consider an electric vehicle, including nearly 1/3 of those who are primarily looking at the used market. This is the ripple effect of policy. Sometimes, even when the benefits are narrowly targeted, the psychological impact spreads wider, creating new demand and shifting public attitudes. Yet, beneath the surface, there is a current of skepticism. The same surveys reveal a surprising twist. A striking 6 out of every 10 buyers say they would have preferred a cut in the VAT rate on public charging instead of the grant. Right now, anyone who charges their electric car at a public charging station pays a VAT rate of 20%, 4 times the 5% rate applied to home charging. This is not just a technicality. It is a source of real frustration and a sense of unfairness for millions of potential electric vehicle owners. To put this in perspective, consider the reality for the nearly half of drivers who, because they live in flats, shared buildings, or simply do not have access to private driveways, cannot install a home charger. For them, public charging is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Yet, they are forced to pay a tax rate that makes every journey more expensive than it needs to be. This creates a clear divide between those who benefit from lower costs at home and those who are left out in the cold by the current tax system. Lucy Tugby, marketing director at Motors, encapsulates the mood. The electric car grant is a welcome move by the government, but buyers remain cautious and uncertain about the details. That uncertainty is not just about the grant itself, but about the whole package of policies that surround electric vehicle ownership, especially the ongoing costs and the infrastructure that supports it. The issue of VAT is more than a matter of pounds and pence. It is about fairness, access, and the broader goal of making electric vehicles a practical option for everyone, not just the privileged few who can charge at home. According to a recent survey, nearly half, 49%, of non-electric vehicle drivers say they would seriously consider switching if the VAT on public charging were cut to match the home rate. That is a massive potential boost to adoption, hiding in plain sight. The stakes could not be higher. The United Kingdom has set an ambitious zero-emission vehicle mandate. By the year 2030, 80% of all new cars and 70% of new vans sold must be zero-emission vehicles. By 2035, that number rises to 100% for both categories. These are not distant targets. They are just over half a decade away. Meeting them will require nothing less than a seismic shift in how people buy, drive, and think about cars. But the road to mass adoption is riddled with obstacles. High upfront costs remain a barrier for many families, even with government grants on the table. Range anxiety. The fear that a car will run out of power before reaching a charger still haunts potential buyers, especially in rural areas where charging stations are thin on the ground. And the pace of infrastructure expansion is lagging behind demand. According to Brent Gruber of J.D. Power, elimination of electric vehicle tax incentives and public charging funding could entrench critical barriers to electric vehicle adoption. In other words, unless policy keeps pace with consumer needs, the transition could stall. So is the electric car grant the game changer it is billed to be? Or is it just another political headline? If the majority of buyers are clamoring for cheaper charging, not just cheaper cars, could the government be solving the wrong problem? The next few years will be crucial, as the clock ticks down to the United Kingdom's ambitious targets. The choices made today will shape the future of transport for decades to come, influencing everything from air quality and public health to industrial competitiveness and energy security. Let us dig deeper into the conflict at the heart of this debate. On one side, you have the traditional approach. Use upfront incentives to nudge buyers into new technology. This has worked in the past, especially in the early days of electric vehicles, when high prices and limited choices kept most people on the sidelines. But as the market matures, the limitations of this strategy become clear. Grants can spark initial interest, but they do little to address the long-term barriers, like the ongoing cost of public charging, the patchwork of available charging stations, and the special challenges faced by those without home charging options. Imagine two diverging paths for the future. Down one road, the government doubles down on upfront incentives, but ignores the pain points faced by real electric vehicle drivers. Expensive public charging, uneven infrastructure, and limited access for those who cannot charge at home. In that world, adoption plateaus, and the United Kingdom struggles to meet its zero-emission goals by the middle of the next decade. On the other road, policymakers listen carefully to buyers and shift focus, lowering VAT on public charging, rapidly expanding the number and speed of charging points, and investing in battery innovation. That scenario unlocks mass adoption and places the United Kingdom alongside world leaders like Norway, a country where bold tax policies, including the elimination of VAT on electric vehicles, have already pushed electric market share to a staggering 80%. Let us take a closer look at Norway, often hailed as the global poster child for electric vehicle adoption. Thanks to a combination of tax exemptions, no VAT on electric vehicles, discounted road tolls, free public parking, and a relentless focus on infrastructure, Norway has managed to make electric cars not just attractive, but the default choice for most new buyers. The result? In the past year, 4 out of every 5 new cars sold in Norway were electric. This did not happen overnight. It is the product of sustained policy commitment, clear communication, and a willingness to remove every possible barrier to adoption. Contrast this with the situation in the United Kingdom, where the grant is a positive step but does not address the full spectrum of challenges. Buyers here still face higher public charging costs, patchy infrastructure, and uncertainty about how incentives will evolve in the coming years. The lesson from Norway is clear. Piecemeal policies can only take you so far. To achieve true mass adoption, you need a holistic approach that tackles every aspect of the ownership experience, from purchase price to running costs, from charging access to resale value. But Norway is not the only country offering lessons. Across the globe, different nations are experimenting with a range of incentives and regulations to spur electric vehicle uptake. In China, for example, authorities have introduced a trade-in scheme that offers generous payments, equivalent to thousands of dollars, for scrapping old petrol and diesel vehicles in favor of new electric ones. This has turbocharged demand, even as traditional subsidies are phased out. The result? Chinese electric vehicle sales have soared, forcing Western automakers to rethink their strategies and accelerate their own electrification plans. The United States presents a more complex picture. Federal tax credits, which can shave thousands off the price of a new electric vehicle, have been a major driver of adoption. But there is uncertainty on the horizon. New legislation proposes ending these credits after the year 2026, a move that could make electric vehicles less affordable for millions of Americans. At the same time, states like California are experimenting with their own policies, such as a tax on public charging electricity, a move that risks discouraging adoption at the very moment momentum is building. In Italy, the focus has been on infrastructure. In the past year alone, the country has added more than 26,000 new public charging points, marking a growth rate of over 30%. This rapid expansion addresses one of the most persistent barriers to adoption, range anxiety, and makes electric vehicles a viable option for more people, regardless of where they live. Germany offers yet another perspective. There, established brands like Volkswagen, Fiat, and Tesla have captured a combined 20% of the market share for electric vehicles, showcasing how a blend of policy support and brand innovation can drive consumer interest. Meanwhile, companies like Uber are introducing their own incentives, offering monthly bonuses to drivers who complete a certain number of rides in electric vehicles, further accelerating the shift away from petrol and diesel. All of this points to a key insight. There is no single magic bullet. Successful transitions require a blend of incentives, infrastructure investment, regulatory clarity, and technological innovation. The International Energy Agency puts it succinctly: financial incentives, mandates, and charging infrastructure funding all play a critical role in promoting electric vehicle adoption. But as the market matures, the balance between these levers may need to shift. Returning to the United Kingdom, what does the future hold? If you are thinking about buying an electric vehicle, these policy debates are not just background noise. They have a direct impact on your wallet and your daily experience. Maybe you are part of the nearly half of buyers now more likely to consider an electric vehicle, thanks to the grant. But for many, the real savings could come if the government listens to the calls for cheaper public charging. That is not a trivial issue. Almost half of non-electric vehicle drivers say that a VAT cut on public charging would be the tipping point for them to make the switch. So what can you do as a consumer? First, stay informed. Watch for announcements about new charging infrastructure, battery technology breakthroughs, or changes to tax policies. These can transform the electric vehicle landscape almost overnight. Second, if you are in the market for a used electric vehicle, do not tune out. Even though the grant is aimed at new cars, the ripple effect will eventually boost the used market, expanding supply and putting downward pressure on prices. Remember, Norway's secret was to make electric vehicles practical for everyone, not just early adopters, by combining tax cuts with aggressive infrastructure investment. And what about battery technology? This is the wild card that could change everything. Breakthroughs like solid-state batteries promise to double driving range and slash charging times within the next decade. That would remove one of the biggest psychological barriers to adoption, range anxiety, and make electric vehicles appealing to a much broader audience. Meanwhile, new business models are emerging, from battery swapping stations that can refuel a car in minutes, to mobile charging vans that bring electricity to your doorstep. These innovations could redefine convenience and make electric vehicles accessible to people who never thought they could own one. But there are risks too. If incentives are withdrawn before infrastructure is ready, adoption could stall. If policymakers focus too much on headlines and not enough on practical barriers, the transition could falter. As the MIT Center for Energy and Environmental Policy Research points out, high upfront costs, range anxiety, and insufficient charging infrastructure remain the biggest hurdles to widespread adoption. Policymakers must be careful not to pull the rug out from under consumers, just as momentum is building. The global competition is fierce. China's rapid electrification is forcing Western automakers to cut prices and accelerate their own plans. Trade tensions could complicate supply chains and drive up costs, especially for critical materials like lithium and cobalt. In the United States, the looming phase-out of tax credits could create uncertainty for manufacturers and buyers alike. Meanwhile, the European Union is pushing forward with strict emission standards and new mandates, raising the stakes for automakers across the continent. For ride-sharing giants like Uber, the shift to electric vehicles is both an opportunity and a challenge. By offering bonuses to drivers who go electric, they are helping to decarbonize urban transport and make cleaner air a reality in cities around the world. But they also depend on policies that make electric vehicles affordable and convenient, reminding us that the transition is about more than just private car ownership. So what is the bottom line? The electric car grant is a positive step, and it has sparked genuine interest among buyers. But it is not a silver bullet. The voices of consumers are clear. Fairness and affordability must extend beyond the dealership and into the everyday reality of owning and operating a car. A deeper policy shift is needed, one that tackles charging costs, invests in robust infrastructure, and makes electric vehicles accessible to every driver, whether they have a private driveway or not. Can the current grant truly drive mass adoption? On its own, probably not, but it could be the first domino. triggering a cascade of smarter, fairer policies that learn from global leaders like Norway and China. Here is a secret most people do not realize. If the United Kingdom cut VAT on public charging to match home rates, nearly half of all petrol drivers say they would seriously consider making the switch. Sometimes, the biggest breakthroughs come from the smallest changes. A tweak to tax policy here, an investment in infrastructure there, and suddenly, the impossible becomes inevitable. What about you? Would cheaper public charging convince you to go electric? Or is there another barrier standing in your way? Is it range anxiety, the upfront cost, or worries about battery life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. Policymakers are listening, and the future of transport is being written right now, not just in Parliament, but in every decision made by drivers like you. If you found this breakdown helpful, do not forget to hit subscribe for more insights on how global technology and policy are shaping what we drive tomorrow. Until next